This happened spring break about 4 years ago. My girlfriend Anna wanted to do something low-key. She'd been talking about a cabin trip for months, just somewhere to disappear for a few days with no obligations. Her brother Hunter was on break from school and was staying with us at the time anyway, so he came too. I found a place online. It was pretty deep in the woods, which was the point, and it was cheaper than it had any right to be. I remember thinking that briefly, and then not thinking about it again. We got there Friday night around dinner time. The place felt genuinely cut off. You couldn't see the road you'd driven on from the front porch, which I actually liked at the time. There was an outbuilding off to the side of the property, like a large shed which was padlocked. Hunter played with the lock for a second and said it looked new, like it had been swapped out recently. I said it was probably just the owner keeping equipment in there. We didn't really think much of it. It was getting dark, so we went inside and immediately started making dinner. That first night was fine. We had a few drinks on the porch and went to bed pretty early. I can't remember exactly when, but it started lightly raining at some point. The woods were really loud, which was a major surprise, at least to me. It was this constant wall of insects and frogs, and something about it was actually really calming. I do want to mention that at some point before falling asleep that night, I heard something bigger moving around out there, although I figured it was just a deer. I fell asleep not long after that. What woke me up was a sound like something hitting the side of the cabin. I don't know what time it was exactly. Let's just say 2. I froze there in bed for a minute, wondering if what I heard was just part of my dream or not. Right when I was about to try falling back asleep, I heard another thump, which sounded identical to the first one. I rolled over to see if Anna was awake, but she wasn't. So, it was up to me to investigate. I really didn't want to, but if there was a bear poking around out there, it would have been better to know about it than to not know. So I reluctantly got out of bed and grabbed one of our flashlights. I didn't want to go outside, but the outdoor visibility through the cabin windows was limited. Despite that, I noticed what appeared to be footsteps on the ground near the outbuilding, which was incredibly alarming. Those footprints could not have been ours because none of us had been outside the cabin after the rain had started, at least, not to my knowledge. I reasoned that it was possible Hunter had gone out there without me realizing, so I figured I'd ask him in the morning. Still, I was pretty confident that he wouldn't have done that, which made the situation all the more eerie. The footprints didn't look like an animal's, although they were too far away to tell for sure. And if I had been unwilling to go outside earlier, there was absolutely no chance I was doing so after seeing what I saw. I made sure the place was locked up and went back to sleep. Unfortunately, the night was far from over. I woke up a few hours later to knocking on the front door, which is one of the most terrifying things I can imagine waking up to. Hearing that knocking meant there was a stranger out there, which actually got my heart going a little bit. It was just so late. I couldn't think of a good reason why someone would be knocking on a cabin door in the middle of nowhere at 4 a.m. The knocking woke up Anna, who was about 10 times more scared than I was. I had to do something. So I walked over to the door. Before I could even announce myself, the person on the other side said he was a forest ranger and that there had been some kind of incident in the area and he needed to do a welfare check. I paused a bit before responding, mostly out of fear, but it was obvious he already knew I was there. I told him we were all good and didn't need to be checked up on, saying I just wanted to get back to sleep. I thought that would do the trick, because he paused for a little while before saying anything, but then, instead of leaving, he said he'd need to ask us a few questions. I was instantly suspicious, and I was almost fully confident the person on the other side of the door was not any kind of law enforcement. At that point, Hunter had woken up too, and was standing behind me. I whispered to him to call the police, saying I'd stall the guy at the door. I went back and forth with him, giving him nothing answers without telegraphing my suspicion. After a little back and forth, Hunter walked up to me and whispered that the police said no rangers had been dispatched to the area. That's what I suspected. but hearing Hunter actually vocalize it made my heart rate kick up again. I was scared and downright panicking at that point. It was 4 a.m. We were truly in the middle of nowhere, and some guy was banging on the door pretending to be a ranger. I don't know how, but it felt like the person on the porch could sense my fear, because he raised his voice and started banging on the door a little harder. I told the person I wasn't going to open up, and I wasn't going to answer any questions, which only seemed to anger him. He started demanding I open the door, threatening to kick it down and telling me I'd be arrested for failure to comply. That's when Anna screamed at him to go the away, which only made things worse. He started kicking the door, and when it didn't give, he stomped around the cabin. I yelled at Anna to go lock herself in the bathroom, which she did. Hunter and I grabbed some knives from the kitchen and just kind of tracked the guy's sounds around the cabin. I was beyond terrified, but I had no choice but to prepare for a fight. This guy meant us harm. This guy was trying to break into our cabin and kill us. Before I could react, one of the windows shattered into a million pieces. That guy had thrown a rock through it. I was ready for him to jump through, but he didn't. It was the tensest moment of my life. After what felt like forever, with Hunter and me just staring at a broken window, I heard police sirens approaching. I'll fast forward through this next part. The police searched the area, but miraculously, they couldn't find the guy. Hunter was furious. He was practically yelling at the officers that the freak had been on the property less than a minute before they arrived, so he had to be close by still. The officer said there was nothing they could do and advised us to just pack up and leave, so that's exactly what we did. It's not like we had much of a choice, but Hunter wouldn't let go of how incompetent those officers were being. It was only after the fear and adrenaline wore off and we were driving away that I realized how truly insane what just happened was. For someone to even know about that cabin in the first place was so unlikely. It was like they planned it, and what they even wanted was a mystery in and of itself. All in all, it was an extremely uncomfortable and unsettling experience. This happened back in 2016 when I was a senior in college. I was in a frat TKE, and one of the traditions that came with being in Greek life, at least at our school, was that you spent spring break with your brothers and whatever sorority or sororities you were affiliated with. The groups were typically huge, usually 30 or 40 people, and everyone packed into the same rental or resort for the whole week. I won't say it was the most wholesome experience you could have in your early 20s, but I also won't pretend I didn't have a ridiculous amount of fun doing it. That particular year, the plan was Acapulco. I don't remember whose idea it was originally, but within a few weeks, we had something like 40 people booked at this resort on the Pacific coast. The main character in the story isn't actually me. It's my buddy Sahil. I'm going to try putting this as nicely as possible. He was the kind of person who, no matter what situation you put him in, was going to find a way to make it louder and more complicated than it needed to be. I say that with total affection because Sahil was genuinely one of the best people I knew in college. He just had absolutely zero self-preservation instincts and no impulse control, which was especially problematic because he was incredibly impulsive. We were maybe 3 or 4 days into the trip when a group of us decided to go to the local clubs. It was a great time right up until Sahil, true to form, started scanning the room, looking for someone who could get him something. Let's just say stronger than whatever was in his glass. I'm not going to bother spelling things out, but it shouldn't be too hard to connect the dots here. It was a terrible idea. We were in a foreign country, in a city with a reputation that wasn't exactly clean. Plus, nobody in our group spoke any Spanish. I told him to drop it. A couple of the other guys said the same thing, and Sahil said he would. But I knew he wouldn't. I had been through his things too many times. We kept an eye on him for a while, but the place was genuinely enormous. And after a while, we kind of stopped tracking where he was. He was a grown-ass man. I wasn't about to waste my night babysitting him. I figured he was somewhere in the crowd, Sahil disappearing into a crowd was not unusual. I went about my night with my other friends, and it was a great time. Sahil never turned up, though, which I found stranger and stranger the later it got. I don't remember what triggered it, but one second we were all drinking and partying, having a good time, and the next we were all frantically trying to contact Sahil. He wasn't answering anyone's text messages, and when we called his phone, it went straight to voicemail, meaning it was dead. That wasn't good. Sahil may have been a crazy dude, but he was an organizational freak. He wouldn't just let his phone die like that. After a little while longer, we made the call to leave. Odds were he was back at the resort, and we'd find him passed out in his bed. The sidewalk outside was a mess of people trying to get cabs all at once, so a few of us walked about a block and a half before pulling out phones to call a driver. It was probably around 1 o'clock in the morning, so we're just standing there, waiting on a driver. When who do we see but Sahil stumbling towards us out of the darkness? We ran up to him, and it was immediately obvious that something seriously bad happened. He was a complete wreck. His shirt was torn almost fully off, and his face was completely swollen. Not to mention the fact that he was limping. We got him into the car and back to the resort. A couple guys kept asking him what happened, and he kept saying he'd explain later. It wasn't until we were back in one of the rooms that he finally started talking. Here's what he told us. He found a guy near the bar, this short Mexican guy who didn't speak much English. He had a friend with him who was supposedly doing the translating. Sahil made it clear what he was looking for, and the guy understood. Sahil told us he was reluctant right away, because something felt off about the translator specifically, but he couldn't put his finger on what. Then the short guy pulled out a small sample and offered it to him right there, and Soil tried it. He said it was good, and that's kind of where his judgment evaporated. After that, the short guy said he couldn't do business inside the club and told Sahil to come outside with him. Sahil knew he shouldn't have gone, but he went anyway, which, what do you even say to that? They walked out a side exit, and there was a car waiting just outside the door. Before Sahil really understood what was happening, they were already pulling him into the back seat. They drove. He said it felt like maybe 15 or 20 minutes, but he was panicking and not exactly thinking straight, so he honestly wasn't sure. What he was sure about was that they went rummaging through his pockets the second the car started moving. They robbed him, and when he tried to resist, they beat him senseless. They destroyed his phone and stripped him of everything of value. What saved him was that, at some point during the drive, one of the guys asked him why there were so many Americans in the city right now. And Sahil, without really thinking about it, explained that he was there on spring break with dozens of other students from the same university who were all staying at the same resort. He had no idea at the time that he was essentially talking his way out of being killed or trafficked. The two guys went back and forth in Spanish for a while after that. Then the car pulled over and they threw him out. He landed on some random road he didn't recognize and just started walking. He didn't know where he was, so he had no choice but to just walk in the direction he thought the car had driven. And by some miracle, it turned out to be the correct decision. I really don't know what would have happened to him had he not run into us, or if he had left the club 20 minutes sooner. We debated calling the police for about 3 seconds, before unanimously deciding that was probably the worst idea for everyone involved, Sahil included. Besides the guys in our immediate group, nobody at the resort ever found out what happened. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe for more weekly horror. On screen now is the most recent upload and the most viewed story on the channel. Pick your next one carefully, and remember, some stories are better not listened to alone.